Welcome to Two Socially Distanced Old Choughs, a tale of two hospices. I'm Tamsin Thomas.
And I'm Gina Stones.
And it's so good to see you for
lovely.
real.
Yeah, really nice. Getting used to the teams, but actually it's really nice in person.
Even though, and this, you may be able to detect this in the sound, we are properly 2 metre distance, but it's really important we do that. Things you have learnt since we last spoke? Have you learnt anything new or different?
I don't think I've learnt anything particularly different, although my ukulele playing is coming on a little bit, so slowly, but we're getting there. And also, I think for me, it's just about keeping that communication channel going in the hospice. Actually, people are getting, I think it's fair to say, just a little bit kind of fed up is probably one way of putting it, but actually they want to come back to work and be safe. So we're putting plans in place for that to happen, which is great.
For me, I've learnt you have to water plants, even when they're outside. So that's been a big step forward. I've also got two hands on the piano now. So I think we're heading towards our own theme tune, don't you?
I think that's a real worry for myself.
But there we are. And I've learnt also that there's nothing quite like seeing people face to face. It's been hard.
Huge.
I think I've been a big campaigner for remote working, as you know, for a while, and you get an awful lot done sitting in a quiet place like your kitchen, and Teams is great and all that sort of thing, but actually I've been coming back into the hospice a bit more, and you see people, you have that chat in the corridor, and those smiles where you're just reassured. It's very special, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But big reason for us being here today is it's Volunteers Week.
It is. The whole week of celebrating our fantastic volunteers, which is a great excuse. We need to do that as an organisation.
Too right. And also, I think we need to acknowledge that for some of them, this has been quite tough because they haven't been able to come to their volunteering job. We're slowly getting, in the retail part of our charity, the donation centres open, but the shops aren't open yet. And you just think of all those people who love going and working in the shop, and they're not able to do it at the moment. And, I feel for them, and it'll be such a party when they come back, I think.
I think it will. I think we do need to have that kind of party, and, we've absolutely missed the volunteers, certainly in the hospice buildings. It's been a real different place without them, and I guess we have a couple of volunteers here, Mike and Adrian, who've been with us throughout this strange time. So we can hear a bit more of their story, but actually it will be lovely to start to see those faces coming back.
So I walked in today to the hospice, first smile, Mike. And it is really nice actually. You think, yay, there's human beings in the world, not just my quiet little house.
There's still some of us left. Yeah.
What first got you into volunteering?
Oh gosh, how long have we got?
As long as you like, as it happens, it's a podcast.
Oh, fine.
You carry on.
I am 2 metres in the opposite direction from both Gina and Tamsin and Adrian. I've been volunteering all my life. Started at school, decorating and gardening and visiting old people. Carried on in my 20s when I lived in Helston, and it was Rotaract, the junior Rotary. We did charitable work. But my main charitable work when I was in my 30s, I was a Samaritan. To say thoroughly enjoyed it is a difficult thing, but I did enjoy doing what I did. And I did it for quite a long time. And then I had a job then which took me away from home a lot, so I couldn't do the volunteering. But the moment I retired, I got back into volunteering and did a few bits. And about 3 years ago, I decided to try and join the hospice. And they accepted me, here I am.
And I nearly said you're part of the furniture, but that's such a rude thing to say.
Wooden is the word.
But you're here a lot, aren't you?
Yeah.
You are part of our team.
Well, all the volunteers, we are a team. And the last couple of months have been so strange because there's been nobody around and it's been so quiet. And when you do the morning shift at 1 o'clock, in comes the afternoon person, and you stop and have a chat. And a bit more of a chat, and then the morning person goes and the afternoon person stays, and then at 5 o'clock the evening person comes in and has a chat with the afternoon person. It's all been so strange and so quiet, really literally quiet, because there's been very few visitors in, because we're having to limit one visitor per patient at a time, and only allocating 2 visitors per patient anyway. So there's been, you haven't got the mother and the father and the 2 children coming in to see granny or grandpa all together, and then a bunch of friends coming in during their lunch break, and it's just been quiet.
It's a weird balance, isn't it? Because that quiet, I was saying to someone, one of the things that I have loved about lockdown is hearing the birds again.
Oh, yes.
And, standing in the garden and thinking, this is how it sounded when I was a kid.
Yes.
And there's no traffic in the background and everything. But equally, come here and you miss the noise and the laughter and the chatter.
Very much so, yeah. And everybody doing the 2-metre tango and trying to avoid everybody else.
I love that term. The 2-metre tango, I'm keeping that.
Actually, Mike's very good at it. He was giving a demo this morning. I think you're right, and actually coming into the building itself is very different, which is why it's really important to have, that person on reception who can intercept, say, we don't normally look like this. This is what you need to do before you can go onto the walls, where they'll see Adrian, and actually it's just about explaining things differently, because it's not how we would normally work.
And you've been immensely busy, Adrian.
Well, yes, it's been very busy, and although I can see from the world from where Mike sits, it's been quite quiet, but actually the hospice has been very full.
Yeah.
We've had a full range of patients, and a number of the patients have been with quite high needs. That means that extra work for the nurses, the staff, the doctors, and indeed myself as a volunteer. So it's a bit of a contrast between the quietness in the sense that the patients aren't allowed to have the range of visitors, and they clearly miss that and that interaction. It's hard for the families, but we have actually been very busy, and that's a contrast, I think.
Can I ask you how you felt about carrying on and doing all your shifts on the ward? Were you anxious or nervous at all?
Well, I think that I've always been conscious that we've been very careful with infection control. It's always been something that we've been very, very strong on here. One of the staff that joined us during this outbreak said, "Oh, I didn't know you did it that way, that's really good." And I won't say which healthcare setting she came from, but it is true. And I noticed the stocks of PPE, and we had the hand sanitizer throughout. We even had toilet rolls all the time, So the whole place had a safe feel for it. So coming into here, I wasn't nervous about that. And I think the way that the place has reorganised itself to be even more safe, although it has its downsides sometimes, but for instance doing the admissions through the side of the building instead of through the main building, isolating patients very quickly and telling the volunteers very quickly that they were doing that has always been important. So I felt pretty safe all the way through, and I think I felt looked after as well in terms of everyone doing their bit to make sure that we knew what was going off and how things were working. I miss the flowers. Obviously the hospice doesn't look the same without the flowers. And that's a thing that we as volunteers do.
So you'll know you have to water flowers.
I do know. Oh yes, and wash them.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a big change. It's also a challenge because there have been fewer of us able to do the shifts. So whereas in the morning shifts you work as a team of 2 volunteers quite closely together and handling things between you and that, we've only been able to have one person on at a time, so it becomes a bit of a rush at times, but everyone's worked as a team, and I think that I would say that all the things that make the hospice such a good place to be in the sense of a team have actually been more so during this. So I've seen the team working together, housekeepers, doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants, volunteers. I think that it's always been a teamwork situation, but I think under the pressure and the circumstances we have, we've pulled together even more as a team, and I felt to be valued as part of that, and that's a good thing there, while being in this. The other thing that's been different, as a ward volunteer you come in once a week normally, sometimes twice, and coming in more frequently than that, I see the difference, more of the difference that we make to people's lives. Patients come to us in their very darkest days often, and it's a precious thing that we can do for them to help restore some quality of life and some time for them. And because you're seeing the patients more often, you're aware of the difference that we make. I can think of patients who come to us here who weren't eating very much and weren't speaking very much, and at the time of the care of the staff here, they've become able to have some more quality of life, which is very precious for them and their relatives and friends at this very dark time. I've seen more of that up close. I mean, I can think of one case where a patient came to us hardly couldn't eat or drink and had to have one of these drip feeds, and it was really quite a bad way. And with the care that he got, he made such progress. He was able to go to a special nursing home from here, waving to us as he went. A little miracle, and that was a great thing to see. So you see more of those little miracles, and you hear more of the time than you do when you only see once a week.
I think that's a really interesting way that you explain it, because actually the way that we've historically had volunteers support us is that they'll come in for a Monday morning or they'll come in for a Thursday afternoon, and it's really good for me to be reminded you need a bit of that, because actually I guess for both of you being here, you start to recognise families coming in at reception. Your first thing I know for a fact, Mike, you're getting really good at remembering car number plates.
Car number plates.
And that kind of thing, and that's a real nudge for me to be thinking, how do you get that same feeling of team and your patients that you're looking after when you're only here for an afternoon or a morning here and there, and actually...
I think it would be from a reception point of view, because we have no contact with the patients at all, other than when they arrive or hopefully leave through the front door. It would be nice to have some feedback on the patients.
No, you're right.
I mean, I know we have one quite a long-term patient who's been with us, I think, since about the turn of this year, and I know his wife very well. I know her phone number when she rings in, and I say good morning to her without, just by recognising her phone number. But I have absolutely no idea how her husband is, and sometimes it would be nice to get a little bit of feedback, because we deal with the people, we deal with their friends and their relatives, and we take phone calls from Trillis saying, I need to find out about John Smith, and so it's got through to the ward. You know what room John Smith is in, but you've no idea what his condition is. I'm not suggesting that we have a full breakdown of every patient every day, but sometimes it would be nice just to...
But I think perhaps showing some of those little miracles that Adrian talked
about
is a real lift, and actually shows that you're inputting and you're able to kind of... you've got that bit of a bit more awareness of the whole picture, really, I suppose.
And I think it's hit the kitchen staff as well, because the kitchen staff get to know what the patients like through their food and diet and so forth, and what tweaks they can do to the meals to make them more attractive or more easy to digest or whatever. And then they miss that interaction with the patients. So it's a bit of a privilege to be a ward volunteer, because you actually join up and come across other people, suitably socially distanced, of course, right across the organisation.
And I have to say that from where my office is, and because you've been in quite frequently, is that I think you must really ramp up the steps, Adrian, between the ward and the kitchen, to say, actually, we're ready for the trifle in room whatever, and we're ready for somebody would like. So it's absolutely, it's that interaction is so important. I think it's something we need to take away from this.
And equally, and I find it really interesting listening to what you've both said, is how we then inspire the volunteers who are not in the hospices, in the shops, at events, so that they feel those stories and they feel that difference. And taking up that point you said, Mike, I have just written a story about one of the patients who's been coming in to see Helen, our lymphedema nurse, because you'll all have seen this person going backwards and forwards, but you don't know anything about him.
Don't know anything about Mike.
And he's wanted to tell people that he Helen has changed his life.
Yes.
And so, we've brought him to life and he was very happy to share the story. And I thought, never mind about the people outside our charity, how beneficial for all of us to hear what he's got to say.
Yes, because it doesn't matter what you do in this organisation, particularly as a volunteer, because, excuse me, you can be a reception volunteer, a ward volunteer, you can be a gardener, you can be working in the shop, you can be a driver, whatever the volunteer does. It's all about the 8 or 10 people that are in those wards.
Yes.
And that is what we're doing it for. They are the end product of what all of us, whether we were paid or not paid, it's the end product. And I think it would be nice to know, obviously without telling names, it would be nice to find some stories, but particularly about Helen's patients, because some of them come in on a regular day every week, so the volunteer on duty gets to know them, they know their name when they come, before they come. And but yes, they go off with Helen, and half an hour later they come back again. I've got no idea what's been going on in that half an hour. Some sort of feedback would be lovely.
It was very interesting. A while back we told the story, and she won't mind me saying, of Caroline, who's one of Helen's patients. And she was very good. She shared her whole story. She works on the trains. And a couple of days after we'd shared her story publicly, she got on the train and she said the whole regular carriage of people, their attitude changed completely. They wanted to know more about her and about what we do. And she said this whole new conversation built up because people saw her in a different light. Not being there, but actually genuinely wanting to know more. And that, you're right. We need to.
Because the one thing we need to do is to spread the word.
Yes.
Because we want their money.
Yeah. So I think you could do a lot better on this and you could perhaps tap into some of the experiences that we have, because we have a particular perspective on this that we should be able to share, because without the shops, without the volunteers, it doesn't work. It doesn't happen.
No, that's very true.
I think maybe that's a showcase for something in between, kind of coming from Volunteers Week, Tamsin. We maybe need to look at that as an organisation. I think we can take that on, and now you've both volunteered so beautifully. That's lovely.
You've just walked straight into that trap. And we've a recording of it, so you're in real trouble. You're listening to Two Old Choughs, a tale of two hospices. I'm Tamsin Thomas.
And I'm Gina Stars.
And we're joined by two of our volunteers from the charity, Mike and Adrian. Adrian, we haven't asked you, we put Mike through this. What got you into volunteering?
So, I've retired, moved to this beautiful county, and thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to put something back into this beautiful county for the privilege of living here? I knew about hospices. It was our adopted charity from work, and a friend of mine unfortunately died in one. And he said what a difference the hospice made to his final days. This wasn't in Cornwall, but elsewhere, but in terms of simple things like having drink and food available and so on. And and of course it happened to be very close to where I'd moved to, so that seemed like a good place to be. And I've been here 5 years now, and it's been an amazing thing to do, to just a small difference to a much bigger team that delivers, as I said earlier, such minor miracles in people's lives. And so I've never regretted my choice of place to volunteer, and doing more of it just recently has only reinforced that. I have to say that doing these extra shifts, the staff have been ever so welcoming and pleased to see me, which gives you a lift as well, which is a selfish way of looking at it. And of course it's dealt with any issues I had about my mental health in lockdown, because the time I walked up here through a deserted Charlestown, which is pretty weird in itself, and back and done the shift, that's a large chunk of the day. So it's kept me busy, but hopefully in a useful way. And so I hope that because I've been doing this for a while now, I've been able to use that experience during this time to spot some of the things like when the wife of some of the patients come in and what they like to do when they're here and that sort of thing, which you wouldn't otherwise pick up naturally. It's a bit odd to be a morning volunteer with only one person doing it though, so I'm looking forward back. If we ever get back to the old normal, or a new normal.
I don't know what either means actually. I've lost that.
I hope that we'll be able to do the partnering, because that's quite handy. And of course the strange thing about the way the volunteering is structured, I see Mike quite often, but I never see an afternoon volunteer, because we have in the ward volunteer because we don't actually cross paths. The shifts don't align like that. So it's quite a strange thing. But it's been. I hope I've made some useful contributions here, but it's also been good for me as well.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's something very rewarding about volunteering, isn't there, for your mental health and for everything else. And interestingly, my mum came here for care, and there's a member of my family who only remembers the volunteer who did the ironing.
Yes.
Because that member of the family didn't cope very well with mum being ill and with coming into a hospice. And it was the lady doing the ironing one day who just got chatting to him, and he leant against the wall and just chatted with this lady. By all accounts, we think he probably just let it all go. And that lady carried on ironing and folding, and then got him to carry the ironing to wherever it needed to go. That changed his attitude completely and utterly. But if you ask him what did the nurses look like, he doesn't remember. He only remembers the volunteer.
So it's often both patients and families tend not to distinguish between doctors, nurses, housekeepers, volunteers. We're just people who help people in the hospice. So you have to deal with that. I don't know who should be doing it, what you can't do, but I don't know that, but I'll find out somebody who does.
I think that's an accolade.
I think it is, and I also think is that people choose, don't they, who they want to speak to, and actually that friendly face with a bit more time sometimes, or that first person that you meet when you come in, or the person with the tea trolley is always a popular person, and you kind of people just they know when to talk to people, and that's lovely, and that's what we're about. It is about being one big team, and it's about the impact that we all make.
Do you think there's a future for volunteering?
There will always be. There can't not be, because, like Adrian, I've been retired for some time. What else am I going to do with my time? You asked Adrian earlier, was he worried about coming in? I was worried about not coming in. When this all started with the lockdown, I thought, oh God, what on earth am I going to do? Sat at home 7 days a week. So I'm delighted that I was able to continue coming in.
Had Tamsin known that night, you'd probably been watering her garden.
Shocking role that I find.
The other 5 days of the week, I have got a rather large amount of that water to do.
But I think that for us now is, we're starting to see the government lifting lockdown, and we need to start to think about how we get our volunteers back with us, and that needs to be in a safe way, and to acknowledge that there will be those people who are really looking forward to getting back for all kinds of reasons that we've talked about. And there will also be some of those who are still worried. And, you know, you being able to say what it's like is hugely valuable. It's much better than it being written in an email or a letter, but being able to talk to people is fab.
And we spend a lot of time trying to bust myths. And I think sometimes you are our best ambassadors for doing that. You know, you've already addressed that, you know, how dark and gloomy and horrible is a hospice, and you've just proved it's not. It's a home to miracles, quite literally.
Yeah. So a lot of people are afraid of and worried about what a hospice is going to be like when they get there. But actually, it's a very human, loving and supportive environment. And very sweetly the other day, one of the patients bought us all a cake, which was rather sweet.
It didn't go as far as reception, I think.
No, I know it. But that was very sweet. And so it's a loving, supportive community that is helping people into the biggest challenges of their lives. So that's another example of giving that feedback.
And you know, I think we've all benefited in a weird way from the strange life we've been living because we've all been brought a bit closer, even if we've been on remote working and joining our colleagues by camera or whatever. But some of us have had the chance to do a few volunteer shifts. Some of us have had time to chat to other people. I think there are a lot of benefits to come out of this, despite the fact that we know it's been a struggle for people.
Yes, I think the thing that's been most difficult for the patients and their families is the restraint on numbers, which I understand, of course, but I do know that's been difficult. And it's meant that the two nominated visitors have had to do take things for the whole family and network of relationships in regard to that patient, as well as managing their own issues about coming into a hospice. So that's been another challenge, I think, and I think I'm not sure what you can do, but if we can help the experience of wider families from this, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think what we are looking at doing is once we're able to relax some of those rules, you know, actually, and we can do that safely, then we will. But what's also lovely is that we've had donations of a couple of iPads for each unit, so that families can keep in touch with those people at home, which is something that we've talked about before. We haven't had, but thanks to a lady in Bristol whose father had died in hospital and she wasn't able to visit, we've had those donated, which is lovely. So we absolutely take that.
I was just going to say, following on from Adrian's point, when there are only 2 visitors per patient and they both come at the same time and one has to sit in the car, and that's, I know why and I know it's important, but to be sitting in the car outside a hospice when somebody inside your loved one is as ill as they are, it's just somehow, it's been so lucky for the 3-month period, nearly 3-month period of the lockdown. The weather's been so good. If the weather hadn't been good and people, you know, the visitors have to leave the patient when the patient is having treatment, and instead of what they used to do was go and sit in the concourse and make themselves a cup of coffee, they're now having to leave the hospice. And fortunately, the weather has been so lovely that they've just been able to wander around the garden, and then a nurse comes and finds them and says, "You get back in now." But I always feel so sorry for the one party who's still sitting in the car, and then they can swap over, and the first one then has to sit in the car. And it's I know it has to be done, but it's a shame. Mm. Can I just mention one other thing? There were 2 volunteers who haven't been mentioned, and I miss them the most, and that's Molly and Lola, our pat dogs.
Do you know, I think everyone misses the pat dogs.
Wednesday afternoon is my normal shift, and at 3 o'clock Moira brings in Lola, and Lola has to have her biscuit before she'll do her rounds. And I miss Lola terribly. Molly is our latest new pat dog. We've all known Molly because she is the dog of one of our staff. We've known Molly since she was a puppy, and she's now a pat dog. And I miss them more than all the other volunteers put together. And there you are.
Right, put you in your place, can I just say?
There was another lovely thing that one of the staff organised. She brought in a lamb, a pet lamb one day. Don't you know? That was a wonderful thing.
Nice.
Oh, what a lovely touch.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But
I have to
you
say-
get to pick up more of these things.
Of course. And it is a good day when you walk down the corridor and you see there's a dog ambling ahead of you. Years ago, I think we've talked about it before, there was a patient here with a little terrier dog, and it worked out that the doors at Mount Edgcumbe Hospice slide open. So when it needed a wee, it just went and stood at the doors opened, it went out, it did what it needed to do and came back. It's just, I loved that. That was really good. I can understand that. So there's just one other thing I wanted to... Do you talk about your volunteering outside of the hospice? Do you tell your friends about it?
I tell people, obviously, that I am a volunteer. Obviously, not anything about what goes on in the hospice. But yes, I'll tell friends. I don't phone them up and say, hey, I'm a volunteer at the hospice. But I mean, when people come to stay and old friends and we talk about what we're doing with our lives, then yeah, quite happy to.
Yeah, I'm the same. I talk to my friends whenever, it's part of my life, and that's something I share when it's busy and it was a piece of cake today or whatever it might have been. It's a positive part of life, not something to hide away.
No, I think also those are the most constructive things for promoting our charity. The conversations that someone with a passion has with a friend during a walk or at a dinner party or whatever it is, I think that's the most powerful way of sharing who we are and what we do.
Yes, yeah.
We're doing it virtually sometimes at the moment.
Yeah.
Having spent many years as a Samaritan, where you don't tell anybody what you do, and I always found it difficult to say, or when somebody says, well, where does he go on a Tuesday evening? I go out with friends. Instead of, I go out exactly the same time every Tuesday evening because I'm going to the Samaritans branch and then coming home again, and not being able to tell anybody is strange. But yeah, I see no reason in advertising the fact, but I see no reason in hiding the fact either.
So it's interesting. People you know, it's quite easy to share with. People you don't know so well, it can be a bit of a showstopper to the conversation. They didn't quite know how to react to that.
No, and it's very odd when I can remember saying to somebody one day, they said, we see you're changing jobs. And I said, I'm going to work for Cornwall Hospice Care. And they started to talk about this.
Yes.
Were you whispering? And almost put a black coat on to carry on the conversation. Yeah. And that was great, because that was my in then to say, hang on a minute, it's an amazing charity, and now that person actually does fundraise for us sometimes with various things, but it was that instant reaction in a way was brilliant.
I must say, I did get a few raised eyebrows when somebody says, can you do something next week? I said, no, I'm going to be in the hospice.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Yes, I had that one with up in Derby where my father used to go. He took some of the things to the charity shop for the hospice in Derby. The charity shop in the hospice in Derby ran Cornwall to say they sold something and raised a few pounds from it. And my wife said, he's at the hospice. Ended the conversation at the other end because she didn't explain that I was a volunteer.
Yeah, it's just that word, isn't it?
Yes.
Hospice. That,
There's a lot of work to do on that, haven't we? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been a fabulous conversation, and so good to hear from two of our volunteers, and hopefully you sharing your experiences will encourage others, or even if it doesn't, it will prove to people that you can talk openly about these things.
Oh, yeah. It's very important to talk openly, particularly when you're meeting the patients, as you are, Adrian. Yeah. Particularly when the patient who's been here for some time sadly passes away, we all need to offload and talk to others about things that have happened. And because we can't talk about it at home, for obvious confidentiality reasons, it's important that we are able to talk to each other about it.
Yes.
Mm.
And I think we've given you some food for thought.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Well, thank you. We've really enjoyed having a chat with you. Mike, you need to go back
I'm on
to your
duty.
desk job, because you're actually on duty, and we're going to get growled at in a minute.
No, I'll sit
I've
here.
got the day off.
Listen to you. Mike and Adrian, thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
Good to see you, Gina,
And
as
you
well.
too.
And
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you're busy.
And it's good to see you, Tamsin.
Actually, that's the nice thing. The four of us have actually had the chance to sit in the same room, which is fantastic. You've been listening to Two Old Choughs, a tale of two hospices and stories of little miracles.